Hello guys, it is Game of Theories here, and it is so close to Christmas, and with Christmas comes rewatching all of the all-time classic Christmas films, and no Christmas film is more classic than Nativity. By far, the most iconic character from these films is Desmond Mr. Poppy, constantly being that teacher we always dreamed of having, who really doesn't care one bit about the rules. But sometimes he takes them just a bit too far. In fact, Mr. Poppy has committed so many crimes in these films that I'm surprised the police have never been involved with St. Bernadette's. So I thought today we're going to look at how many crimes Mr. Poppy has ever actually committed in these films, and what is his biggest crime, and with this, how much time will he be spending behind bars. Let's get into it, because he's certainly on the naughty list. But before we go any further, please make sure that you click that red subscribe button down below and have your notifications turned on so that you get notified every time I make any brand new videos. With this, I'm going to be using the highest possible jail time outcome. Lots might be a bit unrealistic, but this film is unrealistic, so let's make this jail count as high as it possibly can be. Let's start off with the first film, and he already commits his first crime by telling everyone Hollywood is coming. From here, it's just a downward stretch as he gets blinded by those Hollywood lights and seems to forget about what the law actually is. He spreads false news to the press that Hollywood are coming. Hollywood could take this to court under a defamation lawsuit for false information, meaning Mr. Poppy could be heavily sued by Hollywood. Mr. Poppy wants this play to be huge for Hollywood as well, so he takes the kids to see a baby being born. Whilst there is no laws against kids watching mothers giving birth, since many faint, there are laws about children having to view things that they aren't comfortable with and being forced to view them. Plus, taking children out of school to a hospital of all places without a risk assessment and without parents' consent would definitely be breaking many health and safety protocols. Breaking health and safety regulations can be a fine of up to £20,000 as well as 2 years in jail. However, watching someone give birth without the mother's consent is also a crime. Under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, every person has the right to choose their private life, including birth partners. Breaking this human right could see Mr. Poppy fined yet again, or have jail time of up to 10 years. When Mr. Maddens is explaining Hollywood to the parents, Mr. Poppy purposely lies in front of them, committing a false statement charge, in other words, lying with no oath required. While this can't be prosecuted, if the parents did something with this false information, then it could lead to court time. Mr. Maddens eventually does go to Hollywood as we see in the first film, but Mr. Poppy makes him take 2 children with him. When Mr. Maddens returns, they find out Mr. Poppy had forged the parent forms and had taken the children without any consent. Forgery alone can lead up to 10 years in prison. Abducting children under the age of 16 without consent can be up to 7 years jail time, but that's just only for one child. So this could potentially be 14 years just for the kidnapping, and that's not adding the 10 for forgery. For the play, Mr. Poppy steals a lot of farm animals because he wants to make it as realistic as possible. However, this could lead to an unlimited fine and could be up to 12 months in prison. While he has the farm animals, they aren't actually in a safe place and environment, being kept in his caravan, and this happens a lot throughout the other films as well. This could lead up to 3 years due to the Animal Welfare Act. Moving on to Nativity 2 now, Danger in a Manger, and Mr. Poppy clearly hasn't learnt about kidnapping yet because he kidnaps Mr. Peterson and several other children yet again. Kidnapping an adult can be life imprisonment, but since it was only for 1 day, it could be up to 8 years he has to spend in prison. Now, since there's a lot of kids and a baby, and each abduction is worth 7 years, I'm going to round it to around 40 years for all that. So that would be 48 years for kidnapping 2 whales. With this, he also leaves half the class unattended without an adult for hours. Now, this doesn't actually break a law because as long as the children aren't in a risky environment, which the school isn't, then you can't be prosecuted for it. But it's definitely another reason for Mr. Poppy to be fired. Whilst on the bus trip to Wales, Mr. Poppy steals Mr. Peterson's money of £60, and this could lead him up to 6 months in jail. On the trip, they abseil down a mountain with little to no equipment, and Mr. Poppy lowers children down where if they drop, they could easily die. Luckily, none of them do, else I think Mr. Poppy would be straight in for jail for the rest of his life, but since no injuries were caused, there's no jail time for this crime. When St. Bernadette arrived at a Song for Christmas competition, Mr. Poppy breaks an entry leading up to potentially 10 years in prison. Let's move on to Mr. Poppy's last film now, Nativity 3, Dude, Where's My Donkey? Mr. Poppy is first fired from St. Bernadette's, finally, after all this time they finally realise that he's actually not very good of a teacher, but then he continuously trespasses after being asked to leave and breaks back into his old workplace. Trespassing can be a 1-year jail sentence. When trespassing, he also stalks and spies on the kids and teachers, which can be another sentence of 2 years. To further trespass without being caught, he impersonates an inspector, which can be anywhere from 1 year to 10 years in prison, so let's just say it's the biggest amount, it's going to be 10 years for impersonating. Since throughout most of Nativity 3, Mr. Shepherd can't remember up from down, let alone who he actually is, and he isn't able to make decisions properly for himself. Mr. Poppy then takes advantage of this and does things for Mr. Shepherd that he would never ethically allow. Doing this is another 6 months in prison. In number 3, Mr. Poppy kidnaps a load of kids yet again and takes them to the other side of the world without parent permission. He seems to have a habit of just kidnapping people and abducting them at Christmas time. He seems to have a little problem with this. So we're going to have to give Mr. Poppy another 40 years for kidnapping an adult and several kids like last time. However, to get to America, Mr. Poppy steals Oakmore's plane tickets and pretends to be them. Identity theft is another 7 years by itself, and stealing plane tickets is another 7 years as well. And finally, we have general harassing of people in New York, the hotel workers, Sophie and her family, and of course Bradley Finch. This is all either another unlimited fine or just another 6 months jail time. And finally, we've reached to all of Mr. Poppy's crimes. By far, the biggest crime would be kidnapping several children and taking them to America, because unlike the other times he abducted children, he also committed huge identity theft at the airport in the process, looking at potentially 54 years just for that crime alone. So, the total amount of years Mr. Poppy would have to spend in jail if he could get the most amount of jail time he could possibly get for each sentence, he would spend approximately 174 years and 6 months in prison, and would be paying a fine of well over £20,000 for all the times he's going to be sued. So, the big question is, how on earth has this man not been fired yet? I know in the fourth film his brother also commits a lot of crimes, but never to this extent. But even if Mr. Poppy is a huge criminal and is probably going to be spending the rest of his life behind bars if the police ever find out what he's done, I'd still absolutely love if he was my teacher. But anyway, guys, that is the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure that you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Guys, let me know down below in the comments, what do you think Mr. Poppy's biggest crime is? What was his hilarious crime? And what is the one where you actually think maybe that's a bit too far, Desmond? Let me know all your thoughts down below. And as always, Merry Christmas from us here at Gate of Theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you.